right, it's a Wednesday morning in early April, and I thought I'd talk some more about meditation today. You know, the tagline for this podcast is music, poetry, and psychogeography. And so you might wonder, well, where does meditation fit in with those three? And it's kind of a foundation in all of those. If psychogeography is that kind of aesthetic layer on the external landscape and the ability to quieten the mind and observe with as few preconceived ideas as possible is very much part of the psychogeographic stance. And the same, I think, holds for music, whether it's listening to music, thinking about music, writing about music, and poetry. The ability to understand what is part of the experience, what is part of the object, what is part of both. Is that line between experience and observer meaningful in this moment? All of those are questions that come up in meditation. Today I thought I would talk about doubt and different ways that word can be used. To begin with, I'm thinking particularly about the kind of doubt that comes up when the alarm goes off in the morning. It's 10 to 4 in the morning. And the plan is to get up, do a bit of stretching, and then meditate. Right? It's the time of day set aside for meditation. It could be 10 to 4 in the morning, it could be 10 to 4 in the afternoon, it could be whatever time is set for meditation. And the thought arises, I don't want to do this. Particularly if it's early in the morning, first thing in the morning, I don't want to get out of bed, because what's the point? Isn't it better to get an extra hour of sleep? What do I really think is going to be accomplished by getting out of bed and meditating? Who do I think I am? What do I think meditation is? What's the point? There's doubt in the efficacy of meditation. There's doubt perhaps in the value of the practice, or the value of me as the practitioner deserving to do the practice. All of these are virulent ideas that swirl around. And I call that doubt. Right? Doubt in my own commitment to the practice, doubt in the value that I will receive from the practice, doubt in the practice itself. Now, what can I do? What can we do with that feeling of doubt? Well, I think the first thing to recall is taking refuge in the Buddha. Buddha models the practice. Buddha models the result of the practice. There is a Buddha. There is the Buddha. We have Buddha nature. We have the evidence of the result of the practice in the figure and the person of Buddha. So when my doubt arises, before I put my feet on the ground, I force myself to recall that the Buddha practiced these same meditative exercises. And he explicitly said, don't take my word for it, do it yourself, and see what happens. So as I'm struggling to get out of bed, my back hurts, and I'm tired still, or I think I'm tired, or I think I'd like to sleep some more, I internally shout to myself. I forcefully tell myself, these are exercises that the Buddha suggests I give a good shot to. It's not faith, right? I'm not replacing doubt with faith. I'm not calling on some external beneficence or some external force. I'm calling on the question. The doubt in the efficacy of the practice, well, if I'm curious about the efficacy of the practice, do the practice. Doubt does not necessarily need to be a blocker or a constraint on the practice. It could instead be the push for the practice, because a doubt is really a question, and a question is all we have when we start to meditate, we start to practice. What is the nature of my mind? What is the nature of this moment? What is the cause of suffering? Now, don't get me wrong about faith. I mean, I certainly put faith in plenty of irrational and unprovable parts of the practice, particularly with the form of Buddhism that I practice. There's chanting and mantras that call forth deities, and tantric practices that cleanse karma and require visualizations. These are not purely straightforward, rational objectives. Right? There's a full spectrum of things. But if we talk specifically about the doubt about the efficacy of the practice and the doubt about the value of the practice, I try to turn that doubt into a question. And then a question can have an answer. The answer could be no, but there's only one way to answer the question, and that is to pursue the steps required to work it out. And those steps have been well defined. So refuge in the Buddha, refuge in the Dharma, and refuge in the Sangha as well. But in that immediate crisis, when the alarm goes off, for myself, I find it most useful to recall the Buddha and the lineage of the Buddhas and the lineage of the teachers, that they are exemplars. There are tens of thousands of practices and teachings within the Dharma, and that's a refuge as well. That's a jewel of the practice. But in the specific moment when I'm like, geez, I can't get up. Why would I get up? What's the point? It's not going to work for me. Well, I have evidence that it did work. Evidence with the historical Buddha, evidence with my own teachers, evidence with my own friends and Dharma companions who I can witness and see the effect of the teaching. So that kind of ties in with aspiration, right? But it's aspiration that in that unique moment is framed as a question. And so the question can be worked on. And so I can overcome that very immediate hurdle of doubt. And then the other tool, or the other tactic to overcome doubt is routine. And so here's where I'll go with this. A lot of the emotions and sensations and thoughts that come up that prevent the practice of meditation are really the argument of the ego against doing the practice. So let me explain what I mean by that. When I'm sitting on the cushion, there's kind of a settling in period right now. As the practice stabilizes, that settling in period takes less time, but it also settles into a deeper level of settledness. I know that's a tautology or redundant set of terms, but there's a process when I first sit, and I recognize that as practice stabilizes, that process becomes narrower and deeper. But for myself, where I am right now, I sit, and there's literally a physical settling in, and it can take a fair number of minutes and quite a bit of fidgeting before I can get into a point where my legs have stretched out and my back is straight, my shoulders are firm, I've got a good sort of hand position in front of my belly button, and my body is stable. Right? And then my mind starts to quiet down a little bit as well. But I think of it this way: the twitches and nervous tics and itches that are part of the body there's two ways of looking at it. One is, yes, my body is over 50. I have aches and pains, and like any physiological action, I need to stretch out and settle into it. It's why I like to do a bit of yoga before I sit, so that I minimize that initial discomfort. But there's also a point where, as that settling in occurs, one of the things that is happening is the broader sense of self becomes stabilized, and the broader sense of self, the distinction between self and other, the settling into the mantra or the concentration on the object or the awareness of the moment, that requires a reduction in the strength of the ego. Right, all of the part of myself that thinks it is permanent, that thinks it is experiencing something. That thinking part, that discursive mind, is reduced. And I think that the discursive mind recognizes the settling of the body as kind of its death throes. And so it fights against them and causes more of that physical discomfort. There's a point that I've come to recognize when I'm really stable, right? And I feel like, my breath is even and my posture is good and I'm maintaining concentration. One of the ways that I seem to routinely distract myself from that is a sharp pain in my left knee. But I've come to associate that with my discursive mind playing games with my body, so that I will think, I better stretch, I better move, so that I don't permanently hurt my leg. It's bullshit, right? Now, I give into it more times than not. I think, what's the harm in just sort of relaxing a little bit, letting go of that dynamic tension just a bit, just so I'm really not hurting myself. But other times I hold through it. I breathe through it. I observe it. I have a place where it fits without distracting from the broader sense of self. And I think that the doubt that comes up when we approach practice time, when we actually say, okay, I'm going to go practice now, I think is part of the same tactic that the discursive mind plays, because it knows that that part of myself knows that it's going to be challenged and that it's going to have to think differently, or perhaps not think at all. So routine is a tool to confront that discursive mind. Because you can say, regardless of what I'm feeling, regardless of what else is happening, it's 10 to 4 in the morning, I'm going to get up and meditate. I'm going to get up and feed the animals, wash myself, do some yoga, and then meditate. So it's really more like 4:30. But the routine is like a mountain. And the discursive mind and its arguments against the efficacy of the practice are like clouds swirling around the mountain. Or like birds. There's an image that's often used in Zen teaching of the mind, the stable mind as a mountain. And thoughts are like birds flittering around the mountain. I like to think of the routine and the commitment to the routine as that mountain, or perhaps a path towards that mountain, or a path up that mountain, or a view from that mountain, perhaps. But this unwavering commitment to routine is like a breakwater against the tide of the discursive mind. So, thank you for listening through all of this. If you like these podcast episodes, check out my website, zenglob.net, and links to podcasts, videos, other essays. All right, hang tight. Talk to you soon.